It's the other thing that's been going on in the UK lately, not just the economy, but there's been a big skeleton exhumed from the GFC closet, the great interest rate rigging scandal. It's trashed Barclay's reputation and claimed the careers of several leading bankers. Here's one of them, the former chief executive of Barclays, Bob Diamond, facing some pretty angry MPs at Whitehall.
Mr Diamond, you seem to be inhabiting a slightly parallel universe, because you talk about the culture of Barclays as if that's the thing that saved Barclays. In fact, that's the thing that is the problem. Surely you must realise how enraged people are at the criminality. We also know that the absolute motivation for those traders prior to the financial crisis was their own personal gain.
Andrea, it's wrong, it's reprehensible, it makes me angry, it makes me disappointed.
Okay, well,
and it puts a stain, particularly coming out in this way, it puts a real stain on an organization. This
yes,
was
it does.
14 traders, Andrea. We have a couple of thousand traders.
And how many have gone to prison?
I can't go back and change that.
How many have gone to prison?
But I can deal with it. And there will be, I understand, there will be follow-up criminal investigations on certain individuals.
There was a great bus ad going around Twitter, which I retweeted myself, which is quite funny, for the best fixed rates, Barclays. But Kate tells me, I'm shocked to find that it's actually doctored, it's not real. But anyway, it's pretty funny. What do we think about this? The LIBOR rigging, I mean, it is pretty interesting.
Well, it's just the start,
LIBOR
though.
can be rigged.
It's just the start. I mean, there's a lot of banks that that go into making up the LIBOR rate, so it takes more than one to rig.
There's so many questions left unanswered here, because the LIBOR rate is the basis for borrowing arrangements all over the world. So what this means is people have been paying more than they should do for their money for the past sort of 7 or 8 years. And so the potential claims against the UK banks run into the tens of billions. Yeah. So if a class action gets going, it's going to lead to a real disaster.
And if Whitehall's giving any real sense of the anger out there, obviously there's going to be a lot of angry people in the community.
Well, you can imagine there would be a real basis for a class action on
totally.
this.
And you know, they'll bring down others. I mean, there will be more to this. This is
there's
just
got to be more
the
than
tip
one
of the
bank
iceberg.
involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
One bank can't rig a market. You need.
And Bob Diamond has already said that he will bring down others, so he's not going to go down on his own.
And the other issue here is it's yet another example of a CEO, blaming the underlings. I mean, who's to say? But I mean, every time a problem happens in a bank, it's the CEO sort of saying it's one or two rogue traders that do it. But you sort of wonder, is there a systemic problem in these banks? Given they're too big to fail status.
To rig the LIBOR, there had to be 12 independent rogue traders in 12 different British banks, all engaging in rogue behaviour independently of each other.
Well, it's a whole other wave of acrimony about the banks and opposition to them,
and potentially more regulation, which everyone will yell at and say, "Oh, we don't need more regulation," and in a sense they don't. But if they actually can't behave themselves without more regulation, then what can everybody do? You
do wonder whether they need another system for determining the basic interest rate for institutional lending around the world, rather than the one they've got. I mean, the LIBOR rate actually is not what they are actually lending at, it's what they say they're going to lend at each day, taken 11 o'clock. So each of them are asked the question, what would you lend to other banks if you were asked to do so during the course of today? So it's not actually what they're lending, it's what they say they're lending. So it
requires some trust, which obviously they should be getting.
A cosy gentleman's agreement, it used to be a cosy gentleman's agreement, and maybe all the gentlemen have left the industry, who knows.
But if there is a class action, who would mount it? I mean, who's been hurt by this?
Well, all the borrowers. So let's start with all these small businesses in the UK and Europe whose interest rates are set at the LIBOR rate plus a margin. So you'd have all the SMEs, you'd have all the bond and floating rate bond people who pay a margin over the LIBOR rate. I mean, the number of people affected by this rigging of the LIBOR rate it runs in the tens of thousands.
There's also a lot of people that bought complex derivative contracts that were, offered them various sorts of protections in the market, pricing of which was based on LIBOR. So if these traders are able to manipulate that LIBOR rate, we're looking at some dodgy prices being offered on.
So that could run into trillions.
Yeah, it's the whole system.
It's the whole system.